Time is ticking away here at Donington Park for the GT Cup Championship, but fear not, as we do have one final race of the weekend. But before we head into the action, why don't we take a look at some of the highlights from this afternoon.
The blast towards Redgate corner begins, and it's a good start made by Leung on the inside line. He should hold the advantage, I think, into Redgate corner. Can Simon Orange break through into second place? I don't think he can. Look at Chamberlain around the outside. That Porsche, a rocket ship in a straight line, and it's immediately gaining places on the run into and through Redgate for the first time of asking. Is there a chance into the Melbourne hairpin? Simon Orange thinks about it. He's just a touch too far back, but filling the mirrors of Ian Campbell and making Ian think that the challenge could come at any point.
Wow, I thought they were both missing the corner there. They brake so late, but such is the stopping power of these GT3 cars these days with the massive slick tyres, huge brakes and anti-lock braking system. They both got it stopped. As we see the Porsche that won yesterday's race number 2 coming back through the field, so clearly whatever was the issue with that car has been sorted for now.
Yeah, now this is not for position because it's a lap behind these Group GTH cars, but you would imagine over the next 15 minutes it might stand a chance of getting that extra lap back. Now, traffic here as well for the Group GT3 cars. That's the Sarah Mazir and Melly Zhang battle, and Melly got really out-foxed there by Simon Orange. Has that given Sarah Mazir a chance to get up alongside? Yes, it has. So Sarah does now break through. That's good news. She's into 17th place overall. That will be 7th winning Group GTH, but crucially, she's got some clean air to work with now. Pries the door open into the Melbourne hairpin. Is he close enough for a lunge? No, well, maybe. Campbell leaves the door open and there's contact. Oh, look at that. Simon Orange came from a long way back. Campbell left the door open, turned into the corner. And, well, your thoughts on that, Piers?
I think that was a little late, and unfortunately that piece of bodywork that had been replaced since qualifying has now been damaged, so hopefully they can find another one somewhere, but I reckon he might still be able to finish the race, and the gap back to the next car is, was it Kakad, isn't it?
Yeah.
What was the gap? 16 seconds, so that remains to be seen whether Kakad can close that gap, but Ian Campbell will probably be rightly aggrieved with that move.
And he's going to rejoin the track not far away from Simon Orange, actually. Oh, and the safety car is scrambled. The safety car is scrambled after Ian Campbell has got going again. So this is going to bunch everybody back together when we didn't necessarily need it, but it is going to give us a bit of a sprint to the finish.
Yeah, I'm sure that call was made because this McLaren that we're looking at of Campbell, the race lab McLaren, wasn't able to get started, and the safety car has picked up the leader. They would have made the call in this race steward saying that car is in a stranded position, it's unsafe, we'll call the safety car. But they weren't to know that finally Ian Campbell was able to get that car going again. So it was probably the right call at the time, because ultimately the stewards can only make the decision with the information they have at the time.
Here goes Kakad out of the Fogarty S's. They're going to have time for 2 more laps, I think, aren't they, at the end of this one? And actually, Kakad perhaps keeping one eye in the mirrors to watch for Richard Chamberlain, and Charlotte Gilbert has contact with the GTH cars. Carnage down at the Melbourne hairpin, and that was a really unfortunate moment, that for Charlotte Gilbert, the Group GTC leader. She was up the inside of one Group GTH car, another came steaming up the inside. That was a bit clumsy, Piers.
Yeah, I don't really know how that started. It looked like Charlotte Gilbert was on the inside of the Greystone.
Yeah, I think
Carter. 570, and then unfortunately the innocent party in that was Ed Bridle in the other AMG, the light blue AMG, and he will be bitterly disappointed. He was driving such a clean race, and I know that David Franklin, his teammate, was just looking for a nice clean weekend, and unfortunately through no fault of Ed's, I mean, I think he actually deliberately missed the apex. He saw it coming and still couldn't stay out of the way. So,
but none of this matters to Darren Leung and Century Motorsport. He brings the BMW into the final corner from pole position to a race victory here in the 3rd race of the weekend at Donington Park.
Well, that was a very interesting race, wasn't it, Piers? Great to see some of the highlights. So much going on, so many battles, especially in Group GTH and GT3 and GTC, and I might as well just say GTO as well, because there was so much going on. And like we said about Richard Chamberlain's Porsche out there, he was putting in a great drive, wasn't he?
Oh, great for them to get back out on circuit after we haven't seen them at all of the rounds this year. They've had a few troubles with the car, even yesterday, and to get out there and win on the road was awesome. So great to see them, and hopefully the car goes just as well in race number 3 as race number 4 of the weekend as well. But yeah, as you mentioned, close battles in every single group pretty much. We saw a last lap battle in Group GTC between Collins and Gilbert, of course, and then we had the battle that raged on for the first half of the race in second place and third place between the two McLarens in Group GT3 until a small, a bit of miscommunication meant that that was broken up somewhat. But Sam Ryan finished second on the road. And then Darren Lung, you mentioned pretty much, we spoke about, pretty much dominated that race. They were looking strong in yesterday's pit stop race, didn't quite get the result they wanted, third on the road in the end, but can they go better today?
I think they can. Such a strong driver lineup between the two, so I'm hoping they might take the win for the next race. Also, Callum Davis, a rookie racing in Genettas, and he's amazing. He's battling against Chris Hart, a very experienced driver. You've got John Curry and Stephen Walton and Phil Keane. They're all very experienced drivers and probably have a lot more tips, tricks, everything up their sleeves, but clearly he's quite a match for them, isn't he?
Yeah, he's got the pace, clearly got the pace. I don't know what is going on. He's got some serious, he's clearly done some testing or is very much at one with that car, because the pace he's got, I think he's only, is he 16? 16 years old. Imagine just romping away from the field in 16 years old. So yeah, the team have done a great job to get that car in a window that allows him to do that, and he's feeling confident behind the wheel, and I'm sure that we'll see him go on to amazing things in the future, but it's great to have him in the GT Cup for now.
Really, really, really interesting race. A few DNFs, a few collisions, but that is racing. So we might as well take a look at the track guide for Donington Park, voiced by Andy.
It's the second visit of the season to Donington Park for GT Cup. This time, though, we're on the full Grand Prix loop that begins in a familiar way with the run through Redgate, Hollywood, and the famous Craner curves. The old hairpin is always an action spot before the cars make their way uphill towards the highest point of the circuit at Coppice. Really important turn that leads them onto the exhibition straight, at the end of which we hang a left through the Fogarty S's and then barrel down towards the Melbourne hairpin, which is one of the best overtaking opportunities on the circuit. The lap ends with another tight hairpin, the left-hander at Goddard's, before the blast down the Wheatcroft straight to begin another lap. Donington, a real driver's favourite circuit, partly because it offers lots of overtaking opportunities and partly because of the elevation change over the 2.5 miles. The circuit sweeps up and down through the East Midlands countryside. That plunge down into the old hairpin is perhaps one of the absolute favourite sequences of corners in the country. It's a real momentum circuit, Donington, as well. Side-by-side racing is common, but it will delay the drivers involved. That often backs the cars up into a big group and creates an awful lot of action. All 12 turns add a challenge to the circuit, one that the drivers will be familiar with, but they'll still have to work hard to overcome this weekend.
Seamus and Greg, so great to catch up with you. So how have you found that driver of the day yesterday? You must be pleased with that.
Yeah, yesterday went really well. We had a really good race and obviously got a good result at the end of it. So hoping for the similar today, but we'll see.
Did you find it quite tricky? Like, you were sort of at the front for quite a while after the safety car came out. How did you find that?
No, it wasn't tricky. I just knew that there were some fast guys behind me, and that unless I got some good laps in and kept pushing and stayed out of trouble, that they were going to be on me. So, and it all come good. We managed to keep a gap and finish first, so that was very pleasing.
So in terms of the performance of the car, what happened? Because you had to start from the pit lane, didn't you?
Yeah, today there was an electronics issue. Trouble to start the car, so unfortunately Seamus lost a lap at the start, so starting a little bit further back in that one, but did a reasonable lap time, so that should put us in a reasonable place to get a good result in the next one as well.
Yeah, I'm hoping for a good result for both of you. And Seamus, how have you found it then? So I spoke to the team beforehand and they were saying you just want to improve each time, get a faster lap. How's it been for you?
It's been a pretty good weekend up until the last sprint race when we had the technical issue, but yesterday was fantastic. The pit stop race, I had a sort of reasonable session, brought it in safely, and Greg was exceptional. He had a really superb session, and we managed to win the race, which was great. So, hopefully something might happen and we could repeat that. No, I doubt it, but we're going to have a good race anyway to finish the weekend off, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be. And who are your strongest competitors then, do you think, in this category?
Well, to be honest, all of them, they're all pretty close. They all do very similar lap times. So position or two forwards or back, can sort of make all the difference really on how the race pans out. But no, I think Seamus will have a good start, stay with them, and then we get a good pit stop, manage to get changed over and don't lose any time, and we've got a good chance of being on the podium again, I think.
Okay, well, good luck for the final race of the weekend. I'm sure you'll do fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Paul Bailey, a successful year and also a successful weekend. It's one of the final rounds of the season. One more race this weekend. I am assuming you're going for the win once again.
Well, we certainly are. As it stands at the moment, the Sprint Championship is with us. The last remaining points are insufficient for the chap in P2 to catch me. So we've won that, which was fantastic. And as long as I can beat Chris Murphy in the next race, then we will win the GTO Championship as well. We're slightly ahead of where we started the weekend for the overall championship, and we'll see how that goes. I never set out to win the whole championship. I set out to win my class, and I think we can get that done, hopefully today, and then focus on the overall championship, see how that goes.
A big race for you coming up potentially, and we were speaking just off camera a moment ago about the fact that you've been in this position before, just having to do what you need to do to win the championship. So what's your outlook into the final race this weekend? You're going to go out there and go full push, or is it just do what you need to do?
Well, Richard in his Porsche, when that Porsche is running and it's on full boost, it's uncatchable. That is a phenomenal car. So we also have the Lotus, the GT2, which is a quicker car than mine, and Jay Shepherd's doing a great job with that car. So I guess I'm going to bring it in P3 in class, almost certainly, I would have thought, and we'll see whether Ross can edge it further forwards. But as I say, all we've got to do is beat Chris, and we win the GTO class, which is what we came out to do at the start of the season.
Kenda Developments are clearly giving you a great car. Of course, you've had a couple of changes this year, but every car you've been in, you've been right there.
Yeah, we have had a few cars, I have to say. When the engine blew up on the Brabham again, that was so unfortunate. So we were hired off Peter Cook, the AMG GT3, and I won the class races in that, and I'd never driven it before, and I was really proud of that, to be fair. We then bought off Peter Cook as well, the Lamborghini, and I'm just having to get used to it. It's a very different car to anything I've driven historically, and it's a great car, and I'm just getting used to it and getting better all the time. As you would expect, more seat time means more success.
And Ross is helping you with that as well, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, Ross is an amazing coach. He's really helped me through the season. And today, we've just got to have a very sensible, no contact finish, and then see what happens at Snep for the overall.
Well, Paul, thank you for chatting to us. Good luck with that. Amber, I think you found someone else.
Richard, it's so great to have you back in the championship with us. So how have you found it? I spoke to you earlier and I said you've been putting in some stunning laps today.
Well, today's been a lot better than yesterday. I think yesterday we drove up and down the countryside about 4 times, but got the car going thanks to the team, thanks to Barry, Matthew and Nigel, and I'm not sure the laps were stunning, but the car went all the way around and it's finished the race, so that was excellent. And we're ready for the next one now.
Well, talk to me about the issues that you had. So it was a water pump issue. You did go out for quali though, didn't you? You only managed to do about 1 lap and then realised there was a bit of an issue. You needed to go out and get some parts, didn't you?
Yeah, so Nigel went out in warm-up and there was a overheating problem on one side of the engine. So we thought we'd fixed it, went out in quali. No, not in quali, in the first race actually. So Nigel drove down to a friend of mine at Silverstone, picked up a pump, brought it back, it was the wrong one. So fantastic effort, but 0 points. We tried to fix the broken pump, thought we had, but we hadn't. So that was all day yesterday. So after the first race, we drove down to Cambridge, went home, took a pump off another car, came back and fitted it last night and kept our fingers crossed this morning, and it worked, so it was good.
Well, thankfully. And you are putting in some stunning laps. I will stand by that statement. You get on the podium, you are fighting in Group GTO. How do you think the next race is going to go? It's the final race of the weekend.
Well, I'm sharing with Nigel, so I'm going to start, obviously, and my plan is to give him the car back in good, or give him the car in good condition. Hopefully as far up the grid as possible, but just drive it flat out. That's the only way to do it.
And then see what happens. The beautiful Porsche behind us. Well, thank you for chatting with me, Richard, and good luck for the next race.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We're about to head into the final race of the weekend, and I'm actually quite sad, Piers, because after this, there's only one more race weekend left of the season.
Yeah, just Snetterton after this race. We're going there again, but we've still got one more race this weekend to concentrate on. The racing has been so close this weekend. We've seen a lot of action on circuit. Another pit stop race coming up. It's going to be a good one, I hope. And also,
Lots of action, obviously. We've spoken a lot of the weekend about the intergroup battles, what's going on, but I think now it's time to focus on the standings. So let's take a little look at that, starting off with the overall championship standings. At number 1, we do have Paul Bailey and Ross Wiley. At number 2, we have Charlotte Gilbert and Gilbert Yates, but she has also raced with Warren Gilbert and Morgan Short, so they're still involved in there. And third is Hugo Cook and Sasha Kakad with the overall standings. I think there's a big variety in there, isn't there, Piers?
Yes, apparently there is a chance that Paul Bailey and Ross Wiley could, depending on if everything goes their way, clinch it in this one. It's a lot of championship permutations and combinations with the way the rules work out and the points work out, but a strong result for Paul Bailey and Ross Wiley could see them leave this weekend as provisional champions, I think.
Definitely a strong result because they have switched cars, Paul Bailey and Ross Wiley, starting off in the Brabham at the start of the season. That makes it quite interesting. They're still ahead in the Sprint Championship, but they've been in 2 different cars.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we heard from Paul Bailey just a moment ago, and he said that to have started in the Brabham, then go in the AMG, and now in the Lambo, which he finds is a bit different to the other cars, is still learning it. Ross is helping him out, but they've done really well in Kendall Developments, credit to them, to prepare 3 different cars to the same standard and allow Paul and Ross to be up there fighting for the championship, potentially with a round to go. Clearly doing a good job.
Yeah, definitely well done to them. And I actually forgot that they had the AMG as well. Nearly forgot about that one. So let's take a look at the GT3 Championship standings. So at number 1 is Hugo Cook and Sasha Kakad. They've been putting in some great laps and great races throughout this season. A few struggles for them, mechanical issues. Sasha was complaining that he didn't have the pace sometimes, but they're still number 1 for Group GT3, so I think they're doing quite well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're always there or thereabouts, aren't they? They've won some races, they've been absolutely rapid. I remember the first time we came here to Donington earlier in the year, they were rapid, especially in qualifying. This time out, haven't had the fastest car overall, but we've still had some good results. So, yeah, that's why they're there. Consistency wins championships.
Exactly, and speaking of consistency, what we were saying yesterday, Orange Racing, they are at number 2 in Group GT3. However, the consistency's not been on their side. For the race that we've just had, obviously there's a few collisions and things. I'm hoping to see a better race for them for the final race of the weekend. And after that, at number 3 is James Wallace, who was racing with Sam Mayer-Laughlin, but we've not seen them now. They've been quite busy doing other things, so maybe that might change for the last race at Snetterton. They might not stay at number 3.
Yeah, it'd be good to see them back if possible, but if not, then yeah, I'm sure that someone else will get a chance to get on the podium in Group GT3.
Group GTC, we have Charlotte Gilbert, Gilbert Yates, Morgan Short, Warren Gilbert at number 1. 2 is Patrick Collins and Russ Lindsay, and 3 are the Dezils of Graham and Dan. Great battles between them in Group GTC, sort of friendly and competitive at the same time. It's quite nice watching them, and I'm like, they're all racing quite lovely, aren't they? But it's still competitive.
Oh, absolutely. We saw in I think it was the previous race, it came down to the last lap pretty much, and again, maybe not the class of the most cars, but still some great racing in there, and the cars are awesome. I love the Group GTC cars. The Porsches, they look like a proper handful to drive. The Top Gas Lamborghini looks amazing, really fast and straight line, and we've had the Dezils in there and the other Ferraris, not this round, but yeah, it's been good to have the variety, and we've had some different winners throughout the season.
Definitely, and now because we're outside the Group GTO garages, just a few of them, I think it's worth mentioning where they are in the points. 1, Paul Bailey, 2, Chris Murphy, and 3, Jay Shepherd. And speaking of Paul Bailey, Ross Wiley and Jay Shepherd, they're actually behind us right now, aren't they? So National Motorsport Academy in the Lotus Evora. We've been speaking about Jay Shepherd quite a lot because he's coming up against some big competitors really with Paul Bailey and Ross Wiley. Ross Wiley is such a strong driver, as well as Paul Bailey, but Ross Wiley is a pro, so he does this obviously as a profession. And it's been really good to see Jay Shepherd obviously fighting against them.
Yeah, Jay Shepherd's been putting it to them. Of course, they've been at every round, Ross Wiley and Paul Bailey, but Shepherd's been there, and when he's here, he's giving it his all. And we saw in the last race, can be right there if we need to. And I think we might be able to grab a word actually, Amber.
I think I'm going to grab a word with Jay.
Right, yes, it will be great to go. Jay, good to have you back on the grid.
Thank you.
Last race of the weekend for now.
Yeah.
What's your hopes looking forward? What are your plans for the race?
To get around and finish. I think obviously we might have a sprinkling of rain later on.
Yes.
So it's going to be a choice on going on to wets and or maybe staying on slicks and just keeping going on the black stuff really.
And obviously you're racing with National Motorsport Academy, so how has that been? It's great that they bring the students obviously to learn about racing and get so up and close with the car, so how's that been for you? Have you been chatting to them?
Again, I mean, the guys are brilliant. I mean, they've got different levels of experience. I think the academy is obviously bringing something to motorsport future. And this weekend, I mean, they've really sorted the car out and bolted it up, and I think it's proved in the races that we've done so far the reliability. And yeah, hopefully we can finish this one as well. Silverstone was our first event. We had a few issues because we rushed the car to build it, and we didn't have ABS and traction control in the rain, and it was a bit of a torrid weekend. But we're getting on top of the problems now, and it's working all right. It's good.
So you're sort of using these races then, I guess, to test, isn't it? It's sort of trial and error because you have rebuilt the car so quick. You don't really know how it's going to work, how it's going to be out there. And how does that affect you as a driver when you're out there?
For me, it's the easy job because I'm just doing what I do. But for the boys to get the experience and to just get the car in one piece at the end of the race and get some results, it's not really about winning championships or points as such. The kudos really is to finish the race so the boys have done what they needed to do, and to give them the experience at a track running a car, and that's what we're trying to do initially. And maybe in the future we'll get some plans to run something else and maybe go for more of a championship position in a different class or whatever. So no, they've done good today, really good.
We'll see how this race plays out. Then good luck, and I'm sure you're going to do fantastic.
Thanks, Jay.
Speak to you later. Thank you.
It's great to hear that the spirits are up and they've got the car in a position that they really wanted it, and the fact that they were at Silverstone with the car only just ready, and now they're really ready to get ready for go in the race number 2.
Well, that's what I love about National Motorsport Academy as well. Obviously, you had the Mosler, and now they've got the Lotus. And the thing is, they do want to bring students down to learn how to be at a track, what are the challenges you're going to get, what are the mentalities of everyone around, the teams, the drivers. So it's really good experience for the students to come down. So I'm sure they're enjoying it.
Yes, of course, it's great experience for the students, and it's a great thing that not only can they go racing, but they can provide experience for those people so that they can build their careers in motorsport. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, exactly, because we both actually participated in Formula Student, didn't we? So it's
Yes.
great to get that experience, and I think I would have really enjoyed coming down to the track and working with cars like these and just being in that right environment. So congratulations, National Motorsport Academy, doing the right thing. I think we should also chat to Ross Wiley and Paul Bailey in the Lamborghini. They're behind us, aren't they?
Yeah, I think we grab them in a moment, but it'll be great to catch up with our race 1 winner that we had earlier on. So I think we grabbed a word with him after the race earlier on. So Darren Lung, race number 1 winner. Let's hear what he had to say after that race. Darren, brilliant race. I thought that was it's textbook, right?
Yeah, I don't know, you tell me. Yeah, I just get mad down and drive really. Yeah, car felt really good, so had everything I needed to do to sort of get a move on. Probably drove a little bit too tidy at the beginning, and then eventually just got used to it, and then tried to open up a bit more and found a bit more.
You mentioned yesterday that you actually were planning to do different, slightly split strategy on the setup yesterday versus today.
Yeah, that's right.
It seems like the car's got a bit of extra pace, or is that just in you itself gaining a bit more as well, or a bit of both?
Yeah, I think to be honest, the guys haven't really given us a setup that doesn't work. It's just achieving the lap time differently.
Yeah.
So it kind of helps that I've got clean air in front of me, right?
Of course, yes.
Whereas yesterday I was sort of in the middle of it all and got hit. So kind of that accounts for a lot of things. But yeah, I mean this was quite nice to drive. So was the one yesterday. So we've got a lot of thinking to do.
Yeah, and must be looking forward to the race later on. Of course, you had a strong showing. Unfortunately, just with the timing and the pit starts missed out. But with the pace you showed in race 1, surely the win is on the cards.
Yeah, I think if we can keep the car out of trouble, then yeah, I think we've got a good chance.
Brilliant. Thanks for chatting to us. Congratulations.
Thank
Celebrate
you,
with the team.
Darren. Congrats. We'll catch up with you later. It's great to catch up with you, Ross. I've not really spoken to you much this weekend, so how have you found it? Because you jump in for the second half of each endurance race, don't you?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a... I've been hanging around a lot since the race yesterday. Yesterday was great. I really enjoyed my laps in the car. It was a nice time of day to do it as the sun was going down, and yeah, like I say, really enjoyed it. And today's just been about supporting Paul in race 1, which he had a great result, and hopefully we can replicate that in race 2 today.
Ross, we spoke to Paul, your teammate, of course, just before, not that long ago, and he said, you know, it's been good that you and the team have been able to keep right in the championship hunt, despite all the different challenges throughout the season. Started in the Brabham, which was rapid, then you had the problem at Brands, then you had the borrowed AMG, now the Lamborghini. But he said that you've really helped him in getting to grips with the Lamborghini, which he found is the most tricky. What have you been doing specifically to help him get up to speed as he was in the other cars?
Well, I like to keep it interesting, so we've, like you've said, we've jumped in and out of a few different cars through no fault of our own, but the guys at Kendall Development have done a great job in supporting that side of things. And from my side as the driver coach, it's about just keeping Paul calm and getting up to speed in the best possible way, depending on what car we're driving. And obviously a big challenge jumping between the Brabham into the AMG at Brands Hatch, and then of course now in another rear mid-engine car in the Lamborghini. But yeah, so far so good. He seems to be adapting to it well, and hopefully we can have another good race today.
And just put us in the cockpit, because most people at home haven't had the luxury of driving a GT3 Lamborghini. Paul said that it's a bit different to the other cars. How do you have to try this differently to, say, for example, the AMG or even the Brabham? Because, I mean, on face value, they're fast race cars, so surely they drive the same, but there's quirks, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is the weight distribution of the car. So AMG, you'll notice aesthetically you've got a very long nose and obviously a very powerful engine underneath there and on the front axle. Then obviously now you've got a very short front nose and all the weight's behind the cockpit and over the rear axle. So yeah, the weight distribution is very different. So the AMG, great car to jump in, very user friendly in that respect, and it's about rolling the speed into the corner compared to obviously heavy braking and focusing on your exit with these. But in terms of race cars, I mean, you and I, we love getting in those cockpits, but there's nothing comfortable about it.
Yeah, let's take a step back, because I think the car's going to come out of the garage in a moment. I think last race this weekend coming up, you're going to step in for the second half. What's your goal? Because I know Paul's going to go out there, try and keep it clean, keep it calm. He wants a nice, calm racer. Hopefully steal the championship if at all possible, but you're a racing driver.
Yeah, I'm trying to get him fired up. Yeah, I want to get him fired up and keep pushing, but he's got to drive his own race and do what he feels comfortable with. And I try not to think about the championship or anything. I just want to get out there and race. But of course, you've got to have it in the back of your mind, not go for silly overtakes. But you know, you can't really plan for these things. You just got to drive in the moment, really.
And then obviously if you do take the win for the overall championship, how are you going to celebrate? And it was your birthday recently as well, so how have you celebrated that?
I went out for some dinner with my family, which was quite nice. They're here supporting me this weekend. It was my parents' wedding anniversary on the same day, so it was a double celebration. And yeah, there's no way I'd rather celebrate than be here racing with you guys.
Brilliant.
See, we love chatting to you, Ross. Thank you so much for talking with us, and I'm sure it's going to be a great race for both of you.
Thank you. Yeah, hopefully we can put on a good show. And yeah, enjoy.
We'll look forward to it. Cheers, Ross.
Amazing. Thank you.
Oh, so let's upbeat. It's good to hear that Ross has celebrated his birthday and his parents' wedding anniversary. He seems like a very wholesome guy, family man, and
I know.
But still going around racing at very, very high speed. And it's also really good to get the insight between a lot of the AMs like Paul. They've driven different cars, especially Paul. But there is differences in the cars, even though they do the lap times almost identically, and that's one of those things where the AMs can really make the difference, because the pro drivers together, I reckon between the pro drivers probably 2 or 3 tenths a lap. Between the AMs it's up to seconds a lap. So part of the skill of winning a team's championship like this when you're sharing the car is the slower driver. How quickly can you get them up to speed? And if you are the AM yourself, you need to try and push yourself, because you're going to be the difference for your pro, and the AMs and the pros are there to help coach you as well. So it's an interesting dynamic that group race or team racing like this brings.
I love that because I think there's so much morale, isn't there? They're always supporting each other. And I caught up with Melly Sang and also Michael O'Brien, and he is coaching her. I was like, how are you finding it? And there's such a great partnership between them two because it's her first time racing the GT Cup Championship and racing in these cars as well. He's racing this before, so he knows what to do. He's just passing on all the tricks onto her and just coaching her through. And it's not about going super fast instantly. And it's the same with Alana and Sarah. They're not going super fast. They're just trying to improve each time, slowly, every now and then, and they are making those improvements, and that's what's really lovely to see when they're out there.
Yeah, you spoke to Melly Zhang, didn't you? And she's not got a huge amount of experience, but Michael O'Brien, so much experience, especially in McLaren racing cars. GT3 raced previously earlier on this year, I think in one of the JMH cars, but now back with in the GT4 one. But Melly, you spoke to her. She's a little bit apprehensive, wasn't she? But she's loving it.
Exactly, and she only really had maybe a little bit of like lost grip, maybe not enough traction, something, and she was back out again. It doesn't really affect her, and that's what I love. You need to go out there and make those mistakes, learn from them, and then come back even stronger.
I think it's cool that the GT Cup Championship can cater for everyone, from Melly, who's not got that much racing experience. I say Melly specifically. There's other drivers who haven't got as much experience, but all the way up to on the grid this weekend. We got Dan Harper, Works BMW driver, racing all over the world. You know, he's probably regarded as one of the best GT3 drivers around. You've got other drivers we had this year. Ross Wiley, of course, we just spoke to. We've had a number of really top-class drivers, and it's that breadth of driver. You know, the GT Cup welcomes everyone, no matter your situation, and it gives you people to race against, no matter where you are on the spectrum of drivers.
I think that is the beauty of it, isn't it? And when I caught up again with Callum Davis, actually, I was speaking to him and his dad was saying it's quite funny because Callum can drive these absolutely beautiful, fast, ferocious cars, but he's not old enough to drive on the road yet.
I know.
I just find that absolutely crazy. And we saw that in F1 with Max Verstappen when he first came in. He was too young to be out, but then he's at all these tracks racing. And I just find it hilarious and also just astonishing because the fact that they can get into these cars and you can relate to them a lot, Piers, because obviously you were a young driver getting into all the different formulas and things, so you know what they're going through.
Yeah, exactly. When you're a young driver, you're just pushing on. You're just trying to do as you can and not think about anything other than just going as fast as you can. And we've seen this weekend, the car you just spoke about, the GT for Aston Martin in the hands of Davis, has been so fast. He's been up the road. He's been almost uncatchable. Let's see if that remains in the race to come.
I know. Well, let's speak a little bit about the weather, though, Piers, because I feel it's getting a little bit chilly now.
Yeah.
I think the rain is going to come in, but maybe towards the end of the race. So, as a driver, you're about to start the race. It's dry conditions. It's chilly, there's a little bit of wind. How does the wind then affect the start of the race? And then how is it going to play out when it starts to rain towards the end of the race?
The wind today compared to yesterday is a bit more, I think, and it's a bit more tailwind down turn one, down the exhibition straight, which means that into turn one and also into the Fogarty S's, you'll have a bit more of a livelier rear end because the rear downforce is less effective. That then means that through the middle sector, through McLean's, Coppice, Old Hairpin, potentially a bit more grip because the car's planted. So it changes how the car feels around the lap. I mean, I specifically remember, I might have said this before, but I went to Snetterton the year I was racing single seaters in 2020, and most of the testing was a headwind down the main straight, which meant turn one was easy flat out. And then we all went for a test day just before the race weekend, and the wind direction had changed, and turn one turned into brake and a down change. About 5 people went off at the first lap because no one was used to it. So yeah, it makes a big difference. Maybe not so much in these GT cars. The single seaters are a bit more wind sensitive. But yeah, potential for rain in this one. It's going to stay away for now. The clouds are nice and high, but the radars are looking like potentially a bit of a drizzle later on, which could spice things up. Noticing in the background, the Top Cats Lamborghini is getting some last-minute TLC. So Gilbert Yates standing at the side. Should we grab a quick word?
Yeah, see what's going on there.
Yeah, Gilbert, of course, had that incident, unfortunately, in the previous race. We're just trying to find out whether he's going to get out for this one. It would be great to see that car out once again. Gilbert, of course, an unfortunate incident in the previous race, but the team are working really hard. Do you reckon we'll get out for this race?
Yeah, I think we're going to go okay. They're doing a good job.
Amazing. The Top Cats do a great job always, and you know they've amazing to get it ready between race 1 and race 2.
Yeah.
Your plans for the race or your team? Yeah, win. Brilliant. I love that. Simple, easy cut. It's not going to be easy though. There's a lot of other cars out there, a lot of quick cars, so
we'll be good. We'll be fine.
Brilliant. Thanks for chatting to us. Great to hear that.
Thanks, Gilbert. Speak to you later.
Great to hear that car's going to be out.
I know, because I wasn't wasn't too sure if it was going to go out, and I wasn't too sure if the orange racing car, Simon Orange and Tom Roach, was going to go out, but I think it was more cosmetic damage, so it's something they can fix quite easy, and they'll just get them back out again.
Well, you say easy, I wouldn't be able to do it.
Well, yeah, me either, Piers, to be honest. I'm sure they think it's easy. I was chatting to the team, and I was like, are you going to get out? And they were like, it's just cosmetics, you know. Hopefully it'll be fine, and we'll see how it plays out in the race. There were a few collisions in that race, so it has affected a few of the cars, but who it didn't affect was Richard Chamberlain. So lovely to catch up with him beforehand. Like we say, it's great to see that beautiful Porsche 935 get out again. It's an older car. That's the beauty again of the GT Cup Championship, because you've got a mixture of older cars. The Lotus Evora raced in Le Mans 2011, so it's beautiful to have all these different types of cars, and your obviously Lamborghinis, your McLaren 720Ss. We've got a nice mixture of modern and older.
Yeah, and we heard from just a moment ago from Jay Shepherd. He said that Porsche, once it's up and running with full boost, because they can turn the wick up a little bit, it's almost, you know, uncatchable in a straight line. But it's so cool to have the brand new cars, the older cars, and we're actually just now starting to see the teams get the tyres out of the tyre oven, starting to put them on the cars, which means that we're just moments away from the cars to be open. I think that's 1 minute, I'm just hearing on my ear, 1 minute till the pit lane opens. Once those cars go out of the pit lane, we'll then head to the grid and might even be able to go to chat to a couple of the drivers on the grid, which will be good. And we can hear in the background that the Lamborghini is fired up, taped up.
I think that will be going out. Piers, let's be quite bold. Should we make some predictions for how we think this race is going to go?
You can.
Well, I think I am going to go, but I think Darren and Dan might take it. That's what I'm going to predict. What are you thinking?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think they're going to struggle because, of course, there are invitations to this championship this weekend, so they get an extra 20-second penalty in the pits, which means they'll have to be at least 20 seconds faster than everyone else in the race, as will Ian and Duncan in the race lab car. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. Oh, if you're going to put me on the spot,
I'm really putting you on the spot. I want to know.
You know what? I'm going to go with Cook and Kakad. I reckon they'll have the pace in this race, and I think that they'll fight their way through. Of course, they don't have quite as much of a deficit in the pit lane, so I think that'll be crucial. But then that depends. If we get a safety car around pit lane, that can shake things up. But I think that's my guess in this one.
Okay, I'm not going to make any comments on that. We'll see, because we can't really. Anything can happen. I caught up again with Seamus Jennings and Greg Catton, and they were sort of saying they're not really sure how this race is going to play out for them, to be honest. They weren't expecting to have a little problem beforehand. That meant they had to start in the pit lane.
Did you hear what that problem was?
We spoke a little bit on the interviews, but they were just sort of saying there was something mechanical going on with it, so they just had to fix that super quick, get out there. They put in some really good laps as well, and it is really for Seamus just to improve each time, and then Greg is sort of coaching him through as well.
It was really important they actually got out on circuit in that previous race, even though they were never going to salvage a result because they fell a lap down. Just to get, I mean, every lap you do in these cars, these are tough cars to drive, the GT3 cars. They're fast, they're big. I was about to say they're heavy. They're not that heavy, but they're quite, there's a lot to it.
I couldn't lift them up.
No, you couldn't. But no, they're good cars. They're tough cars to drive, and those extra laps they got will be extra confidence boosts to the start of this race. Also, it's useful for the team. They can then go through the data and have a look to make sure that everything that was, all the sensors are reading the right thing, so that they can enter this race with full confidence and go for full push.
Then how important is going over data with the teams then, Piers? Is it something that you really need to make sure you're on the ball with that then?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's something that probably we haven't touched on enough is the amount of work that goes on behind the scenes with the data, especially the GT3 cars. They are pretty much everything on the car has a sensor on it, you know, exhaust gas temperatures, you've got, you know, tyre pressures, pretty much anything on the car, temperature-wise, speed-wise, rotation-wise, all in the engines, and everything is monitored so that the engineers can, one, make sure that it's reliable, so they can see if something fluctuates above or below normal values. They can then tell the driver to manage it or maybe call the car in to preserve it, but two, for performance, of course, as well. Pretty much everything on the car has an optimal range where the car will work at its best, so most notably tyre pressures, for example. There'll be an optimal range maybe like between 21 and 23 psi, and if you're above that you'll slide around too much, tyres are too hot. Below that the car will roll around, and they're managing all of this all the time. The engineers will be on the radio to the drivers, because there is ship-to-shore radios in these, to let them know, you know, you're going slower through the old hairpin than you were in race one, brake a bit later, or we're struggling with a bit of temperature, so you need a bit of lift and coast, or just, you know, there's so many different things, and it's something that, you know, you guys at home may not have seen, and it's something that all the drivers have to think about while driving as well.
Yeah, because every time I go and have my chats with the drivers and the teams, as you know, because I do love doing that, getting all the gossip, what's going down, they're always going over data. Every time I go into that garage, it's super important. They are all always analysing it all the time because they just want to improve, don't they?
Yeah.
They need to work out, how can we go a little bit faster?
Yeah.
Which car are we going to focus on a bit more in this race? And it's obviously going to affect their race when they get out there if they didn't look over that.
And the data logging that the drivers do is not just for the car, it's for the drivers. The teams do for the drivers. So the pro will go out and practice, do a couple of laps, and then the AM or the gentleman driver will often then go out afterwards and set a few laps, and then you've got a direct comparison at the speed of every corner, how hard you brake, where you turn, where you accelerate, every single corner around the lap. And then the professional drivers will be able to help the AM drivers or the less experienced drivers say, look, this is where you're braking, this is where I'm braking. You can brake later here because, and it gives them the confidence to say, look, it can be done because look here on the screen, you'll see the line, the speed is higher, or the brake is later, or they're pushing more pressure, and you have to be so precise on the controls that just being able to see it in real time and have a look at it throughout the lap will give the AMs somewhere to concentrate on. So like, right, next session I'm going to brake 10 metres later into the Melbourne hairpin, for example.
Yeah,
That
so
sort of
it's
thing.
super important.
And they'll do it every single session.
Well, I was also just thinking, there was a lot of traffic in these races, Piers. It's very congested, isn't it? And that's always going to affect a lot of the drivers' races. Is that quite familiar for a track like Donington?
To be honest, Donington's not one of the shorter circuits, but we've got quite a big grid this weekend, at least 24 cars I think it is, and all in different groups as well. So I say all in different groups, each car is in their own group. So there's not only battles for direct position in your group, there's also overall positions, and also you're trying to fight through the traffic. So if you're coming across a group GTH car as a group GTO or GT3, you're going to have to make sure that you lose as little time as possible. And that's the key really, is losing as little time as possible. And also, flip that round as well, if you're a group GTH car, being lapped in the right place and the right way to lose a little time as well is very important. And I'm actually noticing there's a bit of an issue, I think, for the Audi stalling on the grid.
Of
potentially.
Kakad and Hugo Cook.
Yeah, it stalled as it pulled up, so hopefully that's not a clutch issue. We'll keep an ear.
They have had quite a few issues, though, mechanical. That's why I said to Sasha when we spoke to him on the grid in another race, a lot of the time it's not really been their fault. It's not through fault of the drivers. There just has been so many mechanical issues with the Audi R8, unfortunately. You do see that in these races.
Well, they're very, very complicated machines, all of the cars. So, for one small thing to go wrong, it can happen, and it sounds like they're still struggling. There's a little bit of worry in the eyes of Sasha Kakad, so I'm not quite sure if they're going to be able to fix that. And it's good to see the Top Cats Lamborghini at the back of the grid joining the back of the queue.
Hopefully it would be nice if we can get them out there, because obviously they are the leading Group GT3, so I really want them to stay there. Unfortunately, it is going to change everything, which makes it quite interesting, but not great for them, really.
Yeah,
so let's keep an eye on that one, because that might affect the start of the race then, if we can't get them off the grid in time.
Yeah, I think actually that is one of the times, which means we're very, very shortly going to have to leave the grid. Everyone else is firing up their engines, just that one, I think, at Audi, which is still struggling yet. I think that means they might not be starting this race. We'll keep you posted. I think the marshal's gesticulating, saying, yeah, they're not doing that, but I think we're now having to leave the grid, so...
Okay, I think we are going to make our way off the grid, so I'm going to pass you back up to Andy for this race.
Thank you very much, guys. Yeah, here we go then. Final race of the weekend for the GT Cup Championship here at Donington Park. We've had 3 very entertaining races so far. All of them won by different drivers, at least within Group GT3. We had the Cook Racing Audi winning yesterday. GCAT Racing won this equivalent race yesterday, the pit stop endurance race. And then earlier on today, Century Motorsport finally getting their first win of the weekend in their BMW M4 GT3. Further back, it's been domination within some of the other groups for some of the regular front runners, really, with Paul Bailey and Ross Wiley grabbing a couple of victories in Group GTC, Group GTO, sorry, Group GTC. Top Cats Racing have been on top, but then we have all of the ingredients in this race, I think, for a little bit of a shuffling of the order. 1 or 2 cars that are going to be starting out of position on the grid, and a few that are going to be starting at the front, but will have extra time to serve in the pit stops, and that is certainly going to mix things up. I think we've got a small delay here to getting the green flag lap underway, and that is because of whatever this issue is for the Cook Racing Audi. It is Sasha Kakad at the wheel, and as the car pulled up into its grid slot, it never actually made it into the grid slot. As you can see, it's parked at a sort of 45-degree angle to where it should be headed, and the car just cut out on him. It did look and sound like he'd stalled it and now just can't get the thing fired up, so I think he might need a bit of a push start in order to get going. I think there's a conversation going on down on the grid now about exactly how that should happen. So yeah, interesting situation. Hopefully they get the Audi R8 sorted and we can get our final race of the weekend underway with a full quota of Group GT3 cars. Now they're pushing the car forward. Is this to try and attempt to push start it, or are they just pushing it out of the way? They're pushing it past the front row BMW, and I can see actually out of my commentary box window they do have a gate open on the pit wall. I wonder if that's, well no, they won't fit the Audi through that, so I think they're going to try and push it all the way down the hill towards pit exit. That's a long way. That camera doesn't make it look all that far, but it's a long way. There we go, they've got the Audi fired up. It just needed a bit of a push start, and he, I guess, will now wait somewhere for the pack to come by behind the pace car, and I presume will be allowed to retake his third place on the grid. Pulls into the pit exit so that he's well out of the way. Hopefully he doesn't stall the car again, and he should now be good to go. So that is good news. So Darren Leung will start from pole position in the Century Motorsport BMW. For all of those cars that do have a out-and-out pro driver on their driver lineup, the AM, so to speak, has to take the opening stint. So the pro drivers will sit and wait for their opportunity. Right, we're hearing it's a gearbox issue on the Sasha Kakad Audi, so thank you for Dan from GT Cup for that bit of information. That's why it's been parked where it has been and needed that push start, and actually is now being pushed back into the pit lane, look. So they got it fired up, but I think every time that car stops, it's then struggling to get going. And if it's a gearbox problem as opposed to a clutch problem, then that would presumably mean that it can't change out of first gear at all. So that might well be their race done before it even really starts. So after a short delay, we get the green flag lap underway, and that means that everyone from fourth on back jumps up one extra position on the grid. So we've now got the tantalising prospect of Richard Chamberlain starting the rocket-powered Porsche, the 935, from what is now essentially third on the grid. It'll still be the outside of row 2, but he could be a real challenger into turn 1. It's Darren Leung's Century Motorsport BMW, though, that will lead them to the green, with Ian Campbell at the wheel of the Raceland McLaren alongside him. We will have no Sasha Kakad from third, so the second row will only be occupied by the CTR Developments Porsche. Excuse me. Then we have Chase Shepherd in the National Motorsport Academy Lotus Evora starting 5th, ahead of Seamus Jennings, who pedals the 33 Porsche in the opening stint. And then, provisionally, your sprint champion for 2023 is Paul Bailey. He will start 7th on the grid, just alongside the orange racing car of Patrick Collins. Top 10 then completed by Group GTH winner twice over this weekend, actually. Callum Davis and John Lancaster. Davis in for the first stint. He's got Chris Murphy alongside him. Then John Curry and Philip Carter, although we don't believe that the Greystone McLaren has made it out after its damage sustained in the earlier race. Stephen Walton and Tim Docker will be together on the next row of the grid. Then Alana Carter in the Lotus Emira with Melly Zhang for company. We saw Melly having a spin the hairpin on the safety car restart in the earlier race. And then two of the big stories really to come out of race 1. Simon Orange disqualified from the race for that contact with Ian Campbell, so he starts from the back of the field, and Charlotte Gilbert in the number 2 car that was also given a penalty after the race earlier on today, and that car therefore starts at the back of the field. I also must correct myself, I misread the information that I was given. It was Gilbert Yates in that car in the sprint race earlier on, not Charlotte Gilbert. You can see, I'm sure, where my confusion came from, but it is, as far as I'm aware, Charlotte who's taking the start in the rapidly repaired Top Cats Racing Lamborghini for this final race of the weekend. So here they come then, down through the Melbourne Loop. Richard Chamberlain seems a little confused as to where he should be lining up. It should be on the right as we look at it. He should be following Ian Campbell's McLaren. Background, keep an eye on Simon Orange. They've now replaced both front corners of the number 67 McLaren. In fact, it's the second replacement left front corner they've had to put on it after a couple of dramas this weekend, but he will be flying through the field and desperate to try and get in contention. Remember, that car's been a contender in all 3 races, but has finished second on all 3 occasions. It's yet to win a race this weekend, and he'll now have a really tough job to do that from the back of the field. Here we go then, race number 4 of the weekend in the GT Cup Championship. It's the second pit stop race, 50 minutes on the clock, and the red lights go out. Away we go, Darren Leung versus Ian Campbell, and here comes the Porsche of Richard Chamberlain trying to find a gap up the inside line. It should be the BMW though that hangs on to the race lead. Chamberlain's gone wide, takes Seamus Jennings with him, and through goes Jay Shepherd into 3rd position. Jennings absolutely the innocent victim on all of that, and ends up out in the gravel trap and right at the back of the field. So Leung leads the way, Campbell 2nd, Shepherd 3rd, Chamberlain 4th, and that looks like Paul Bailey in 5th position, just ahead of Patrick Collins' Porsche, I think. There goes Simon Orange, already nearly at the front of the Group GTH cars, and he needs to really try and make some early progress, get within 20 seconds, or stay within 20 seconds of some of those invitational GT3 cars that will have the extra time to serve in the pit lane. Change for 2nd there, Jay Shepherd past Ian Campbell, whose car seems to be slowing. Campbell seemed to be slowing then as they went through Coppice Corner, as Ian Campbell now got a problem. The last time that car was on track, it was being assaulted down at the Melbourne hairpin, and maybe that's knocked something, because he's definitely off the pace as they drop down the exhibition straight. Through comes Simon Orange, with whom he tangled in that earlier race, and Ian Campbell, I fear, might be destined for the pit lane here. The McLaren now seems to be picking up speed a bit more, and now Jay Shepherd's got problems. Jay Shepherd with smoke coming off the right-hand side of the Lotus Evora. Paul Bailey's going slowly through the hairpin. Simon Orange doesn't know where to go. Bailey has got Patrick Collins up alongside him, but they're dropping like flies on this opening lap. What a dramatic start to the race. There's definitely drama for Jay Shepherd. Campbell, meanwhile, is back up to speed. He's dicing with Simon Orange as they slice their way through the Group GTH traffic. That was Callum Davis on the outside line, getting elbowed onto the grass. Paul Bailey doesn't know where to go. He's got Simon Orange coming through on the inside line. Seamus Jennings in the background flashing his lights. What a topsy-turvy opening lap of the race. Darren Leung leads by 7.3 seconds after 1 lap of racing. There is the issue for the Lotus. That looks like a wheel that's come loose, doesn't it? The right front wheel not attached properly, it would seem. I also just seen out of the window, by the way, that Sasha Kakad has got the Audi going, so that's good news, albeit right at the back of the field. He's on the lead lap, though, so if we get an early safety car, and the way they're going, I wouldn't bet against that. He could be right back in contention. And breathe, everybody. Darren Leung leads, Richard Chamberlain 2nd. Somehow Simon Orange is into 3rd place now from the back of the grid. Patrick Collins there in the orange and blue Porsche is 4th. And whatever was going on with Ian Campbell's car at this point on the opening lap seems to, at least temporarily, have rectified itself. He's up the inside of the Porsche and should be able to blast past it down the straight, although those Porsche Cup cars have decent top-end speed. Of course, they're not able to brake as late, though. No ABS, not as much aerodynamic efficiency and downforce as the GT3 cars. So through goes Campbell. Orange then on the tail of the orange Porsche of Richard Chamberlain, who's been doing battle with GT3 cars for many a year in GT Cup competition. I'm sure he's relishing the opportunity now to get his elbows out and try and defend from the McLaren, which looks to the outside line at Goddard's corner, cuts back to the late apex. It's such a hard car to pass, though, is the Porsche 935, because look at the straight line speed it's got. It gaps the McLaren to such an extent that even though it then has to brake earlier for Redgate corner, Simon Orange isn't able to outbrake it. So Chamberlain hanging on to 2nd for now. This is the part of the circuit, though, where the McLaren should have an edge. Extra downforce means extra minimum corner speed through the Craner curves and the old hairpin. Simon Orange tries to jump to the outside through the Craners, almost gets squeezed onto the grass, nearly tangles with the back of the Porsche. Chamberlain hanging on desperately here. At the inside comes Orange on the exit of the old hairpin, and he does now sweep through. So Simon Orange to 2nd place. That delayed him quite a bit, though, and it means that Ian Campbell is now not that far behind. But of course, Campbell now is faced with exactly the same problem of finding a way past a car that is quite clearly faster than his in a straight line. Through Coppice Corner they go then. Campbell, I'd love to know what the issue was on the opening lap. He's, oh, now is it slowing again, though? Is it slowing again? He's dropped back from Chamberlain. Yes, it is. So it's obviously some sort of an intermittent issue, maybe something electrical. It's almost grinding to a halt now down the back straight, though. So Ian Campbell, that's a real shame, just as it looked as though he was starting to get back into contention. And that mechanical drama that hindered him at the start of the race has come back with a vengeance. So that takes him out of the fight then. It moves Patrick Collins up to 4th. It moves Paul Bailey up into 5th position. Bailey is second within Group GTO. Of course, that's the same class as Richard Chamberlain. We heard Paul saying pre-race that he didn't fancy his chances, really, of running too close to the front of the class. But you can see he's not a million miles behind Chamberlain. He's got the 2 Group GTC cars between himself and his class leader. The 999 Porsche of Patrick Collins, the number 2 Lamborghini of Charlotte Gilbert. Down the hill comes Simon Orange then, at second position now. His previous lap a 29.5, but of course he was busy battling away with Richard Chamberlain for part of that. In the first sector of this lap, though, he is still 4/10 slower than Darren Leung. So Darren Leung gapping the rest of them, a 14-second lead. Now that car has an extra 20 seconds to serve in the pit stop because it's an invitational car. Simon Orange is within that 20-second window. What I haven't been given, unfortunately, yet is the extra pit stop time that carries over the success time that carries over from the earlier race this weekend. So quite how that's going to balance out, we'll have to wait and see. It's here in Group GTH, the 2 Morpheus Racing Mercedes, which have been latched together by a very short piece of string all weekend, are once again running as one. It's John Curry ahead of Steve Walton. They are running at the moment 10th and 11th overall, 2nd and 3rd within Group GTH, as has so often been the case this weekend, struggling to keep up with Callum Davis, who is already a couple of positions and several seconds further up the road. But again, pit stops to come, no doubt some success seconds to be added on for the Race Lab car that won in Group GTH in this equivalent race yesterday, and it won the sprint race this morning. Might just bring these 2 AMGs back into the competition. John Curry shares his car with Phil Keane. Steve Walton with Chris Hart. So we'll wait and see where they come out. That looked to me like the 14 car rejoining the race. That's good news. In fact, yeah, they did get out there, didn't they, the 14 car? That is excellent news. We have, though, seen some drama, I'm afraid, for a couple of runners in the early stages, including the Race Lab McLaren, and with news on that, I believe, down in the pit lane is Piers.
Yes, I've had a word with the team at Race Lab, and apparently the first time Ian Campbell slowed a little bit, the catch which holds the steering wheel so you can move it per driver's came a little bit loose, so he had to take a moment to just reattach that. So he's all good, but then the second time it slowed down, there might be a gearbox or hydraulic issue. They're still trying to diagnose it. They're hoping that it'll sort itself out and he can keep going, but if not, then it might be terminal. But for now, he's still going as far as we're aware.
Okay, thank you, Piers. He has dropped a long way back, but did just do a personal best first sector. So yeah, it's definitely intermittent, isn't it, that drama. Now, here's another one of the pre-race dramas. Sasha Kakad in the Audi. Sasha is, I think, still on the back of the lead lap, just about. He's just ahead of the Alana Carter Lotus. There it is, the Amira GTH group car, making its way out of Cobblers Corner. It heads down towards the chicane at the Fogarty S's. Alana Carter sharing the car with Sarah Messier, and they are running at the moment where are they? They are actually 13th and 5th within Group GTH. They're ahead of the Melly Zhang McLaren Artura. Lotus continuing on its way. They're continuing its development, their development as drivers. Been really nice to see them continuing to get faster as the weekend goes on. They've just put in their personal best lap of the race, actually a 1:38.8, just before Sasha Kakad managed to find a way through. Now, speaking of putting good laps in, Simon Orange has just set the fastest lap of the race, a 1:27.445. It's only 2/10 quicker than the leader. It's a drop in the ocean, really, given the fact that they're 14.5 seconds behind the leading Century Motorsport BMW. But that is a start for Simon. At least he's now beginning to go a little bit quicker than the race leader. And again, once we get into the pit stops, we could see the gaps really start to change around. There is Simon pushing hard into the final turn. The Young has just crossed the line actually to complete his 6th lap of the race, a 1:27.655. What can Simon Orange do this time around? A 27.7, so drops a 10th this time. So it's a shame, isn't it, really, that Simon had to come from the back of the grid. Had he started at the front with Darren Leung, we could be in for a ding-dong battle between the two of them. This could all come back around again in the second half of the race. Remember, yesterday, Dan Harper got into the Century BMW, closed in on Tom Roach in the Orange Racing powered by JMH McLaren, and then couldn't find a way through. They were battling over second place on that occasion. if the BMW comes out behind the McLaren again after the pit stops, we could have a repeat of that, but this time for the race win. This is the car that won that race yesterday. The Seamus Jennings and Greg Caton Porsche, 7th after their Turn 1 gravelly excursion. That was really unfortunate, wasn't it? Richard Chamberlain just couldn't quite get the anchor thrown out quickly enough on the Porsche 935, outbraked himself, ran wide, and would have got away with it had he not had Seamus Jennings to his outside going through the first turn. Seamus unfortunately ended up bouncing through the gravel. There is the number 14 McLaren, so I think it's been in and out of the pits a couple of times actually, but they have got the car running. Philip Carter, we were told, was going to be starting that car. Whether he still is, I don't know, but at least the car is running, and if they can register a finish, that's valuable championship points scored. Through Starkeys goes Sasha Kakad. Now this car, as far as I know, won't have a huge amount of success seconds to be added on because they don't have a pro driver, they're not an invitational class car, and they have had a bit of an up and down weekend, haven't they? So success seconds won't really be something for them to worry about. It's just a shame that they're a long way back now, really. They are down in, well, they've just moved ahead of one of the Morpheus Racing Mercedes. That was the Steve Walton car. So that puts them into 11th position, but over a minute adrift, I would say, of the overall race leader. Darren Leung tries now to get up the inside of John Curry and can't do it very easily. Anyway, Curry's going to drift out wide at the Melbourne hairpin, and in the end it is made quite easy on the exit. Now that's drama for Patrick Collins. Patrick Collins had been running second place in Group GTC because Charlotte Gilbert had gone past him, but now he's in the pit lane. The attention seems to be initially anyway directed towards the left rear wheel, but that takes him out of contention then because the pit window is not open yet. That can't count as the mandatory pit stop, so that means that Gilbert now not really under any pressure at all for the class lead within Group GTC. Group GTO being led by Richard Chamberlain, of course, with Paul Bailey second, about 8.5 seconds or so separating those two. Group GTH led by Callum Davis by probably about 12 seconds or so. It's a 14.7 second cushion now for Darren Leung at the head of the field. This is Seamus Jennings trying to fight back. He's on the tail of Paul Bailey in the 28 Lamborghini. And here the car that leads in his group, Group GTO, the Richard Chamberlain Porsche, under threat now from the Gilbert Lamborghini. Patrick Collins back into the fray. Oh, or is he? That didn't sound very good. Lots of noise, not a lot of movement from the Porsche Cup car. And did he get going? No, I don't think he did. So that car's still stuck in the pit lane. To the first turn runs Richard Chamberlain. Look at that thing accelerate off Redgate Corner. The Lamborghini simply can't keep up in a straight line, but then look, much more corner speed through the Craner curves. So two cars both leading their class, but looking at fighting for a third place overall, and finding themselves pretty much together out on the circuit. Bates corner they go, Gilbert with the patched up Top Cats Racing Lamborghini. And double checking my notes, it definitely, well, I've definitely been told anyway that it is Charlotte who is behind the wheel in this stint, handing over to Gilbert Yates at the mandatory pit stops a bit later on. So Charlotte taking the fight to Richard Chamberlain, one of the most experienced drivers in GT Cup racing, really. I remember a number of years ago he had some terrific battles with Jordan Witt in the Bentley Continental GT3. Two cars that generated lap times in very different ways. They were also both humongous cars. They really did have a great presence out on track, and they produced some fantastic racing. So Darren Leung then, up through McLean's corner. Personal best in the first sector on this lap. The gap is hovering around 14 seconds or so, which may or may not be enough. We'll have to wait and see. Now, there is one very large raindrop that just landed on my commentary box window. That one large raindrop is not enough to concern the drivers, but if it's the first of many, no, it is the first of many. I think it's starting to rain on the start-finish straight. Perhaps Piers can give us a weather report from down in the pit lane, but right now I think the rain is just starting to arrive. It was forecast to arrive at 5 o'clock. Well, guess what? It's 2 minutes to 5 in the afternoon. There are windscreen wipers coming on, and the track conditions suddenly are starting to change. Now, depending on who you ask, some people were saying this would be a light shower. Some said that it would be fairly torrential. Looking out of my commentary box window, there's actually some quite bright sky, but I think that's the direction the weather is heading rather than the direction the weather's coming from. So I reckon there are a few rain clouds starting to make their way towards the Donington Park circuit. And immediately we're starting to see lap times drop off. Darren Leung just did a 1:29.1. That is about 1 3/4 seconds away from his previous best. So this is now going to be really interesting because, of course, we're marching towards the pit window, and that means that there might be some tyre decisions to be made when we get to that stage. We'll get to that in a moment. For now, news on the 999 Porsche, I believe, courtesy of Piers. Piers, what have you got?
Yeah, down at the JMH garage, I got a quick word with Patrick Collins as he jumped out the car. It's confirmed they think it's either a diff or a gearbox, but probably a gearbox issue, so they will not be going out again in this race. And also, you can probably see, but it is definitely raining. I don't know if you can see on the circuit, big raindrops. The circuit will be getting wet very quickly, and we've got cars in already in the pit lane, so I expect a flurry of activity. Back to you, Andy.
Yeah, thanks, Piers. That's Charlotte Gilbert, but she was right behind Richard Chamberlain, who actually went off at the final corner. He was on the grass, but stayed out on track. So you have to imagine that these are cars coming in for wet tyres, and this now changes the complexion of the race entirely. So the number 2 car is in, Paul Bailey is in the number 28 machine. The race has been declared wet by race control, so we're not going to stop it if it starts raining. The drivers and teams have to simply make their decisions now as to what they want to do tyre-wise. Here come the Morpheus racing cars. Absolutely no to tell. You can see the grooves being cut through the surface water. Leung has gone through onto another lap. That's quite a big call from Century Motorsport, although in fairness it's a call that is matched by Simon Orange in his McLaren. He stays out for another lap as well. And Leung actually starting to gap him now. They are lapping about 7 seconds off the pace as the Morpheus cars do battle heading through Hollywood. This, remember, is for second place within Group GTH. John Curry in the 96 and Steve Walton in the 69, tippy-toeing their way down through the Craner curve. So little grip, so little confidence that the car is going to keep on pointing in the right direction. Out of the old hairpin then, up through Starkey's. The gap just elasticates again slightly between the two of them. But this is nerve-wracking stuff. If it's a brief shower, then it's not worth coming in for wet tyres. The correct thing to do, no doubt about it, is to stay out on slick tyres, weather the storm, and wait for the track conditions to come back to you. But if this rain is set to stick around for a little while, then you do want to be on wet tyres. But, of course, you want to wait, ideally, until the pit window opens, because otherwise you have to make 2 pit stops. If you pit outside of the pit window, it doesn't count as your mandatory stop. You have to come back in again during that window. Richard Chamberlain has just dived for the pit lane. You'd have to imagine that's for wet tyres, but if it stops raining now, I think that this is a disadvantage for those who are pitting early. Maybe it's better to just stay out there until that pit window. You'll lose time initially, but as long as you don't bin it and go off the road completely, you should come out on top once all is said and done. Here is there was the Paul Bailey Lamborghini. Here at the hairpin is Simon Orange negotiating the Morpheus Racing Mercedes. Themselves, I think we're getting very close together indeed there. It's still, I think, 96 ahead of 69. Yes, it is. So Curry ahead of Walton. Are they going to come in? Darren Leung has gone through to do another lap. So too Simon Orange, but look at him squirming his way over the pit markings. But right now the rain isn't really heavy enough. There's no massive standing water, no puddles, not a huge amount of spray being kicked up. It's still treacherous, don't get me wrong, but I think it's worth, if you're feeling brave, staying out there until the pit window is fully open, because of course particularly those who have pro drivers waiting for them in the garages, they're going to be eager to get in as soon as the window opens anyway, so you don't need these amateur drivers to stay out there for too long. Down through the old hairpin come the Morpheus cars, running in tandem, but do you get the sense that if Steve Walton has an opportunity to get past John Curry, I think he'd take it. There is Simon Orange up through McLean's corner. Group GT3 cars not to have claimed a victory so far this weekend. Can he change that here? These are exactly the conditions that could open the door for him to claim a victory, but of course he's losing time at the moment to Darren Leung. That gap was 14 seconds, it's now over 17 seconds. Oh, that was a screech of tyres. Someone's off, either at the chicane or the Goddard's hairpin, I can hear through the FX, but who it was, I'm not so sure. Oh, it's Sasha Kakad. Sasha Kakad has been off. He hasn't pitted yet, so he's still on slick tyres. And, well, interestingly, stays out, so he realises that, OK, he's made a mistake, but not worth diving into the pit lane just yet. Here comes Darren Leung, overall and Group GT3 race leader. Headlights fully ablaze as he nips up the inside of the Group GTH leading car of Callum Davis. Callum also excelling in these tricky conditions, it seems, extending his margin over the rest of his Group GTH runners, but, oh, Leung really struggling for traction there coming out of Redgate Corner. That was the 17, I think. The Meli Zhang car staying well out of the way as well. But Leung driving well. He's taking about a second a lap right now out of Simon Orange behind, and that's now getting up towards a 20-second cushion. Now, has John Curry just pitted? No, he hasn't, but he's fallen behind Steve Walton, so we've just had a change there as Leung almost skates straight on at McLean's corner. Perhaps just searching for the grip, but that looked like a bit of a mistake for me. Going into the right-hander at the top of the circuit. Simon Orange then through Schwantz curve. This is where Leung looked a bit scrappy a lap ago. Orange looks a bit neater, a bit tidier. And I don't really think it's raining anymore, is it? I can't see any fresh rain falling on the commentary box window. This is why I thought that maybe those who blinked first, those who jumped into the pit lane early, maybe they were coming in a little bit too soon. I don't know whether there's a drama, by the way, for Richard Chamberlain, but he's still in the pit lane. He's dropped a couple of laps now. Oh, there he is. I suppose it's maybe a lengthier process to change tyres on the Porsche 935. And so he does now head back out into the fray on, we suspect, wet tyres. But a lot of time dropped compared to those around him. Orange down into the Melbourne hairpin. He dropped 6 tenths in the first sector, dropped another 10th in sector 2 to Darren Leung, who completes another lap. Darren Leung is 19 seconds slower right now than he was earlier on in the race, but it doesn't matter. He's going quicker than Simon Orange. Now, which, if any, of the Group GT3 cars have made a pit stop? I don't think any of them have they? So there's no other GT3 machinery to compare lap times to on wet tyres, but what we can do is look at Paul Bailey, for example. So Paul Bailey, on the previous lap on wet tyres, did a 1:42.4. So Paul Bailey is in 7th position. That was 4.4 seconds quicker than the overall race leader. So right now, wet tyres are quicker, but we think they're going to have to make an extra pit stop when the pit window opens. So they're getting a short-term gain, and they're certainly less likely to slip off the road, but I think those who have tried to stick it out are ultimately going to be in the pound seat come the end of the race. Out of Coppice goes Darren Leung. He has got Sasha Kakad behind him. I think he's just put a lap, actually, hasn't he, on the Cook Racing Audi. Into the Melbourne hairpin, braking offline. That's a trick in the wet, because in the wet, the racing line, which has all this rubber sort of embedded in the tarmac, gets very slippy because wet rubber is very slippery, and so you brake off the racing line where there's less of that rubber on the road, and you try and keep the car as stable as possible under braking. But look, he's got no traction at all through the Melbourne hairpin. Almost lost it on the way in, then nearly lost control on the way out. The traction control and ABS coming to his rescue, no doubt about that. But Darren Leung makes his way off the final corner, and he's going to have to start another lap. Across the line he goes. Look at the way he's gapping Kakad, though. Really impressive stuff, this from Darren Leung, who I think I made the point in one of the earlier races this weekend has come on leaps and bounds since his one-make Ginetta racing days a couple of seasons ago, where he was rapid, don't get me wrong, but he's now turned into a really, really good amateur driver, with the guidance, no doubt, of Century Motorsport and Dan Harper helping him in that. And he now leads by nearly 22 seconds, actually, over Simon Orange. Now, there goes Paul Bailey. Paul Bailey, we believe, on wet tyres. Is that rain getting heavier now? He certainly hopes it is. He wants everybody to have to come in and get wet tyres before the pit window. Don't think that's going to happen now, but the wetter it gets, the better his pace advantage will be. Simon Orange bottled up slightly behind Chris Murphy, who didn't really know where he was going, I don't think, and Orange has to take to the curb and the grass going down the Craner curves to make that move stick. Less than ideal, particularly in the wet conditions, but look at Paul Bailey. His car has so much more grip. You can see the extra confidence, the extra speed that he can take through corners like McLean's. On the previous lap, he did a 1:44.4, so again 2 seconds quicker than Darren Leung out in front of the field. That's the advantage to being on wet tyres. Steve Walton, incidentally, has just pitted. John Curry is in the pit lane right now as well, so is Tim Docker, so a few of the Group GTH cars making pit stops. And these are now mandatory pit stops being fulfilled. You can tell that because there are driver changes happening as well. So that is, I believe, the 69 car. That was Chris Hart getting in, Steve Walton getting out. Their teammates also swapping over, with Phil Keane now jumping on board the number 96 car. There, the number 28 then, rounding the Melbourne hairpin. Windscreen wipers still going, but on the pit straight at least, I don't believe it's raining. If it is, it's certainly not very heavy right now. But what tyres do you go on to if you're now making your mandatory stop? Do you want to bolt on the wet tyres? That looks like it's the order of the day right now. But that could still prove to be the wrong decision when you get to the end of the race. There's the Group GTH leading car. What are they going to do then? Car number 13, they've got the wet tyres ready. So they've obviously decided that these wet conditions are going to stick around for long enough that wet tyres are the way to go.
Well, I mean, you know, the ones that have already been in have changed over to wet. Yeah, so we're going to stay on there. But you've got, like,
So Darren Leung then leading the way, 25 seconds nearly now over Simon Orange in second position. Sasha Kakad we're following here. He's up to fourth position, but hasn't made a stop. Started from the pit lane, remember, with that suspected gearbox problem that he had on the way to the grid. So Audi looking good out on track. Out go the Morpheus Racing Mercedes, 69 ahead of 96, so that's Phil Keane ahead. Sorry, Chris Hart ahead of Phil Keane. The Artura in the background, I think that was also wriggling its way back out on track. Look at the number 28 Lamborghini here, though, closing in on Sasha Kakad's Audi on those wet tyres. It's undoubtedly right now the fastest car on the track. On the previous lap, this car went about 5 seconds quicker than the race leader, Darren Leung. Rain must be moving across to other parts of the circuit, maybe away from the start-finish line. Richard Chamberlain, I've just seen, is back in. This will now be presumed for the mandatory stop to hand over to Nigel Greensall. In comes the car. Is Nigel ready to jump on board? Yes, he is. You can see him there with his blue helmet on. Nigel Greensall will get in, and this is the problem now. Those who pitted before the window will now have to come in again. So yes, they've been on the right tyre, they've been gaining time on track, but they've got to make essentially an extra pit stop than the others. And if the rain disappears altogether, then slick tyres might prove to be the way to go anyway in the second half of the race. Seamus Jennings here. Is it still Seamus Jennings? Yes, hasn't pitted yet to hand over to Greg Caton. His way up through McLean's, the beautiful flat six engine note, that familiar Porsche soundtrack propelling him from the rear up towards Coppice Corner. Porsche can be an interesting car to drive in the wet, I think. There's a lot of weight over the rear, which gives it great traction in the wet conditions, really gets it out of the corners well. But there's no weight over the front axle, not no weight, but very little weight over the front axle. And so very easy to pick up a bit of understeer as you lose front tyre temperature in these conditions. Seamus handling this well. We'll be hoping for a safety car, I suppose. If someone falls off the road, that could put the race right back into this team's hands, as happened yesterday. The GCAT Racing team, who have raced in a number of different GT championships in this Porsche 911 GTR GT3. I'm sure really enjoyed having their success in yesterday's pit stop race. So there's Callum Davis coming out through Coppice Corner. Still leading, well, he's not leading anymore in Group GTH. No, he is actually, because I think all the GTH cars have pitted, all of those who are still running competitively anyway, so he is still ahead by a decent margin, in fact, over the Morpheus Racing cars. Really strong weekend this has been for Callum Davis. It's done him no harm at all in the championship. Not just Callum. We must, well, in fact, this isn't Callum anymore, is it? It's John Lancaster, because they have pitted John Lancaster at the wheel of the car, but both of them have done a brilliant job. Callum's done the bulk of the driving because he's done the sprint races as well, but John Lancaster running strongly as well. In comes Sasha Kakad now to hand over to Hugo Cook, and crucially Simon Orange. Now I'd love to know what the Orange Racing powered by JMH team are going to do about tyres. I don't see any wet tyres, or they do have wet tyres racing, and they are going to change them. So wet Pirelli rubber going on to the 67 car. Tom Roach will be jumping in, Simon Orange will get out. And there's a bit more urgency about these pit stops than there was yesterday. Yesterday, when it was just the driver change that had to be done, we've got ample time with the minimum pit stop regulations to be adhered to, but with now tyre changing to be done as well, and that's an extra task for the team to undertake. They've got to make sure they do that whilst also getting the driver safely plugged into the car without losing too much time. So interesting that they blinked a little bit earlier then than Century Motorsport, choosing to keep Darren Leung out there for a little bit longer than maybe I expected. This is a bit of a test session in a way for Century. Of course, they want to try and win if they can, but more interested really in getting Darren some good seat time, and in these conditions, there's plenty to be learned. So Richard Chamberlain then turns his way through, sorry, Nigel Greensall it is now, isn't it? Turns his way through Redgate Corner. That car has plummeted down the order after the lengthy initial pit stop. In fact, I think it took them less time to do a driver change than it did the tyre change earlier on. So that car continues on its way. Seamus Jennings, by the way, has pitted too. So Greg Caton jumping into the Porsche. Chris Murphy is in the number 72 BMW. There you can see him towards the pit exit end of the pit lane as out gets wheeled Tom Roach in the orange and black McLaren. So as Hugo Cook rejoins the race, there is the Century Motorsport car. That's in. Now they've already put wet tyres on that car as well, so they're going the same route as everybody else. It seems that wet tyres is the right choice. So limped around did most of these Group GT3 cars on slicks, just waiting for that pit window. No point pitting before it, because that's going to lead you to have to make extra pit stops, as we have seen now from actually Paul Bailey. Paul Bailey now comes in to hand over to Ross Wiley, so he looked like the star of the show, looked like an absolute hero for a while, did Paul Bailey, but this is now going to lose him a little bit of ground, I think. So Tom Roach out in the number 67 McLaren. There is Charlotte Gilbert, we believe, getting out, and Gilbert Yates getting in. That's what we were told was going to be the case anyway. Out goes the Evora as well. Now that's an easy one to keep track of. That's Jay Shepherd. We know it's Jay Shepherd in the Group GTO Lotus. As there, John Lancaster pedals his way up towards the top of the circuit in the Group GTH leading McLaren. So round Coppice, the next car behind is Tom Roach trying to get up to speed. Now Dan Harper is still in the pit lane. The thing to follow here is how far behind the BMW is that McLaren. You would expect that the BMW will come out in front because it was such a big lead that Darren Leung had built. So you would imagine that they should be able to overcome any invitational extra time from being an invitational car. In fact, yes, they will, because there goes the BMW down pit lane. In the background, out gets wheeled Ross Wiley in the Lamborghini. The Emira leaves the pits as well, as the Morpheus Racing cars once again are side by side, and this is a defensive line being taken by Chris Hart to try and keep Phil Keane at bay. But Phil Keane, a master of GT racing, being in GT3s or GT4s as it turns out, is up the inside now, heading into the Melbourne hairpin, and I think he is about to slither through. Careful, boys, don't make contact. They do just about manage to stay out of each other's way, and Phil Keane has made the move stick. So Phil Keane gets ahead of Chris Hart. That's for second in Group GTH. There is Dan Harper. Dan Harper back into the fray then, and should have a relatively good lead, I think, over Tom Roach. And that's good news for Dan, because he was quicker than Tom in yesterday's pit stop race, but just couldn't get past him after the McLaren came out of the pits ahead. But this time around, Dan Harper has a slightly easier time of it, and an awful lot of that down to the fact that Darren Leung built up such a big lead in those tricky conditions. So Dan has a lot to thank Darren for after that one. Harper turns his way through the chicane, gets over the curb, fights a bit of snap oversteer there as he accelerates off down the hill. See the heat being generated from the front brakes there as the heat haze glimmers as the car comes over the top of the hill. So a at the end of this lap, we'll start to get a proper look at what the gaps are between the cars. Oh, that's Nigel Greensall back in. Now, this is the third visit down the pit lane for the Richard Chamberlain Porsche, and this time it's heading into the garage. That's a shame. So, it had looked like being a solid day for them. It's not going to end all that well. That was Craig Caton slipping up the inside of Jay Shepherd. Jay Shepherd is running where at the moment? He's right down, isn't he, after the early damage, but good to have that car at least back out on the track. Right, we've seen some great racing in Group GTH, much of it coming courtesy of the Morpheus Racing drivers, and I think that's the end of the pit lane that Piers Pryor has made his way down to.
Yeah, I thought I'd head down to the Morpheus garage because, guys, that looked pretty hectic out there. You two were biting lumps out of each other on slick tyres and wet conditions. It was dry and then it was wet, and were you going to come in and weren't you? But it must have been pretty good fun regardless.
Yeah, I mean, overall, you know, there's utmost respect for John. He was in front, but we was never coming in for wet, so we had to keep on slicks for the first stint, really. We just had to manage it. You know, John, when it was dry, he had the pace. I don't think I could have caught him, in fairness, but, you know, I got an opportunity when it was wet and I took the lead. But, you know, all credit to John. It's been a great weekend, and we've had some good racing this weekend, mate, haven't we?
Yeah, it's been some good battles all weekend. Yeah, Steve and I have done the sprints together. We've been out at the same time in the pit stop races, and it's been pretty close the whole time. So, yeah, there's a few tenths within it every lap. It wasn't much fun being the hunted on slick tyres in the wet, I can tell you. Yeah.
And talk to us about the slicks in the wet, because you guys must have been like, oh God, how heavy is it going to rain? And we're going to need to come in. Should I stay in? Should I stay out? Or were you always going to match strategy?
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, we had the strategy that we knew it was going to rain, we didn't know when. But the strategy was to stay out on slicks however it come, because we lose too much time, we're not having a single wheel nut. So the whole idea for us was to stay out and just manage it and go steady, and we knew if we were 6-7 seconds further back, we would pick it up overall. So I think that were certainly our side of the garage, that were our strategy. I'm not too sure about John.
And manage it you did just about. Well done, guys. Thanks for giving us a great show. Stephen Walton, John Curry, a great show indeed. Hopefully the second half of the race goes to plan.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers. Back to you, Andy.
Yeah, thanks very much, Piers. So 13 or 13 and a half minutes to go now. The field is starting to settle down after the various pit stops have been made. But now attention once again turns to the sky, because I really do now think it's stopped raining. There's absolutely no sign of rain on the pit straight that I can see. I'm seeing fewer and fewer windscreen wipers still on. But to my knowledge, everyone's out on wet tyres. So now it becomes a game of tyre management, really, as much as anything else, because the blocks of tread on those wet Pirelli tyres, they are going to start moving around, overheating. The drivers will start to lose grip the drier the track starts to get. And those who can manage that situation the best are ultimately going to be the ones who come out on top in 13 minutes' time. But for Dan Harper, he has got a good little cushion now, 15 seconds his advantage over Tom Roach, now into the McLaren in second place. Greg Caton is there in third in the Porsche. Hugo Cook jumps into the Audi, number 32 in fourth, and then the Group GTO leader, and it is Ross Wiley. So Paul Bailey, for all that stuff that he was saying pre-race about how he didn't really think that car was going to be in contention by the end of his stint, well, that was absolute nonsense, wasn't it? Because he did manage to get himself into first place. Then it's John Lancaster, 6th position for the Group GTH leader. That's a really impressive run for a Group GTH GT4 spec car, essentially. And then we believe it's Gilbert Yates at the wheel of car number 2 for this particular stint. That car leading in Group GTC. Phil Keane is aboard car number 96. That's 8th overall, 2nd in GTH, ahead of Chris Hart, their teammates at Morpheus Racing. We just heard from their co-drivers in the pit lane, courtesy of Piers. And those two cars still circulating quite close together, 2nd and 3rd in class, whilst Chris Murphy completes the top 10. So that's how it looks at the front, well, the top half of the field, basically, top 10 cars. We're following here Dan Harper as he slithers and slides his way out of Coppice Corner, flashing the lights now at the number 17 McLaren, which is now in the hands of Michael O'Brien. Two drivers, again, who have a number of seasons of GT racing under their belts, and they negotiate each other cleanly, thankfully, on the run down the exhibition straight. Look at Harper, though, swerving over onto the wetter side of the road, and then the car almost breaking loose underneath him as he comes down through the Melbourne hairpin. So he is, I think, starting to already think about cooling down those wet tyres. Look, he stays well off the racing line, trying to find some standing water to cool the tyres off, but there isn't really any standing water to be found. The track is drying out quite quickly, and that's going to make track conditions actually more challenging, ironically, in the closing stages of the race. He's quite happy, therefore, to go offline here into Redgate Corner to nip up the inside of Jay Shepherd's Lotus Evora. As the ring light flashes on the back of the Century BMW. He is well in the clear, lapping in the 1:35, so even in damp conditions on wet tyres that are actually now starting to overheat slightly, he's only about 8 seconds away from the dry pace set by Darren Leung earlier on. Great stint that was from Darren to build up the margin. They came out about 12 seconds, I think, ahead of Tom Roach in the McLaren. So if Darren Leung had not built that sort of a margin, they'd have come out behind the number 67 car and would have had a repeat of that battle from yesterday. We'd have enjoyed that, but I don't think Dan Harper would have done. Slides the way a car in a beautiful four-wheel drift there out of Coppice again. Look, hugs the white line. Looks like he's got a problem almost, but he's just trying to find the cooler bits of the track, the wetter bits of the track. Try and keep those tyres as happy as he possibly can, but he's fighting a losing battle on that one. The only benefit, the only plus that he has really, is that everybody's in the same boat. We don't know of anybody who is out there on slick tyres right now, with maybe the exception, and this might be something for Piers to chase up, maybe the exception of the number 17 car, because Michael O'Brien just did a 1:39.4. That is that car's personal best lap of the race. Now, I know that he is a pro driver and Melly Zhang is an AM, so he should be going quicker than Melly, but in these conditions, perhaps not. And more importantly, that's about 10 seconds faster than the rest of the Group GTH field. Now, that car is a long way down the order. It's running in, where is it, 15th place overall. But, sorry, no, it's running in 12th place overall, I should say. But it is lapping quite comfortably quicker than anyone else. In fact, it's almost going as quickly as Dan Harper in the GT3 BMW. So you have to imagine that car number 17 is on slick tyres. I think they might be maybe the only team who didn't jump onto wet. The trouble is they lost a lap compared to the rest of the Group GTH field already. And as much as they're taking huge chunks of time out of them, I don't think it's going to be enough ultimately to get back into contention. So as Michael O'Brien continues to set the timing screens alive, there is the number 13 car, which does lead still in Group GTH. That's the other Race Lab GT4 McLaren. That car definitely on wet. You can tell the cars that are on wet because they're just sort of sliding around the track, particularly at high speed. You can see the cars moving around so much more than they would be on a slick tyre, because we've got now very much a dry racing line, I think. And those wet tyres not yielding the amount of grip that the drivers would like, but they're only going to survive for another 8 minutes of the race. Actually, John Lancaster is being reeled in slightly now for position, in fact, by the Yates Lamborghini. So, out of the right-hander at Coppice they go, down the back straight, and that's going to be a change for position. That's 6th place now. That belongs to the Top Cats car. Not a change in class position or group position, but it is a change for 6th overall. Right then, perhaps with an answer on my Race Lab McLaren question, let's head back down to the pit lane and hear from Piers.
Hunch was correct. Michael O'Brien is out there on slick tyres, hence his blistering pace at this stage of the race. As you can see on circuit, it's a dry line around on the racing line, so he's okay as long as he stays on the racing line. But yes, your hunch was correct. Slick tyres for Michael O'Brien.
There we go. There's a first time for everything. I was right. In comes Nigel Greensall. I think that car's still battling with various mechanical issues. But yeah, what a shame that O'Brien isn't on the lead lap, because he could have sprung a real surprise result within Group GTH. Here comes the other Race Lab car. That's the class-leading car of John Lancaster, which has now fallen behind the Lamborghini Super Trofeo car, which runs at the front of Group GTC. Confirmed, Group GT3 led by Century Motorsport, Darren Leung and Dan Harper. Then it is the Top Cats racing car, Charlotte Gilberts and Gilbert Yates, that leads in Group GTC. Group GTO led by the Paul Bailey and Ross Wiley Kendall Developments Lamborghini. GTH, as I said, by the McLaren Artura GT4, run out of the Race Lab awning or garage, Callum Davis and John Lancaster. So things calming down a little bit now. Race leader is taking chunks of time out of Tom Roach. Dan Harper excelling really in these difficult conditions. He's doing 1 minute 37s. Tom Roach, well, we're still waiting for him to actually get through to the end of this lap, but he's going to probably be in the 141s, I think. He wasn't the last time around, 141.5. When he completes this lap, we'll be able to have a look, but that gap's gone well up over 30 seconds now, I think, between the top two cars. There goes Roach across the line. Yeah, 33, call out 34 seconds. He's dropping nearly 5 seconds a lap. So Tom Roach settling for second, I think. But the team that will be happy, I think, are GCAT Racing. They're going to manage to pick up, I think, another podium finish in this race. They are lapping quicker than Hugo Cook behind them in the Cook Racing Audi. That is Jay Shepherd, though, in the pit lane. The Evora looks like it's going no further. National Motorsport Academy prepared car. And had the damage earlier on, didn't he? Never did see where that damage came from on the opening lap, whether it was just damage or whether it was a issue with the wheel not being attached properly. Back out into the race, they've unfortunately dropped a long way back. There goes Chris Hart, 1.7 seconds now adrift of Phil Keane, and being caught actually by Alex Walker. So in fact he's been caught by Alex Walker, because that is Alex in the McLaren Artura right behind in the white and black cars, and this is now a battle for a group podium within GTH. So to the outside looks Walker into the Melbourne hairpin. And of course, if Walker gets on with this, he might be able to catch up to Phil Keane. And there aren't many people who are able to say that, are there? Down towards Redgate Corner he goes. The number 14 car trying to stay out of the way up the road. They've also got Hugo Cook coming up to lap them in the Group GT3 Audi. Round the outside goes Walker. Lovely move in the McLaren. And he moves up into a class podium. Now, can he catch Phil Keane? Look at Keane's car just sort of sliding and lurching its way down through the Craner curves. The McLaren behind also doing the same thing, so they're both on wet tyres. It's just that the McLaren is working so much better in these conditions than the Mercedes. So up the hill they climb. There is Keane, there is Walker, already nearly halving the distance, I'd say, to the number 96 Morpheus racing car. Started by John Curry, Phil Keane jumping in for the second half of the race. And Alex Walker on his previous lap did a 1:45.5. That was not quite as quick as group leader John Lancaster, but it was quicker than anyone else within Group GTH. Down the back straight they go, and there's a sense of inevitability about this, really, isn't there? 3¼ minutes to go, and I'd be very surprised if even the great Phil Keane could fend off this charge from Alex Walker. Be to move into the top 10 overall. It would, more importantly though, be to get into second place within the group. Hugo Cook and Ross Wiley here together. Now that's also a fight, I believe, for overall position. Ross Wiley was 5.4 seconds behind the Audi at the start of the lap. He's right behind it now as they go into Goddard's hairpin. So let's move into fourth place outright. Again, Wiley already leading in Group GTO, but now wanting to gain some extra positions. They've both nipped up the inside of Alex Walker's McLaren. That's just delayed Walker slightly, but now they will come up against Phil Keane in the Mercedes. And will this delay Phil Keane to the same sort of amount? Through Redgate they go. There goes Walker, slithering through Redgate, drifting out wide. Right then, Hugo Cook looking to the inside of Keane, whose car is really dancing on the edge through the Craners. He's on the inside line now for the left-hander. That will actually delay him a little bit, slowed him down. It also delayed Hugo Cook, and so Ross Wiley gets right onto his tail now. So 2 GT3 cars, but we know that the Lamborghini, the Kendall Developments Lamborghini, does not run within Group GT3. It's a Group GTO specification car. But in theory, pretty even machinery up through McLean's. He's closing in all the time on the Audi ahead. Windscreen wipers back on, and it is raining again now slightly on the pit straight. Bad news for Michael O'Brien, good news for anybody else, because those on wet tyres are now surely going to have an advantage. Here comes Ross Wiley up the inside into the chicane, and in the end, not really a lot there that Hugo Cook could do. Wiley had better grip, better traction off Coppice, and I think maybe a bit better performance in straight line. through he went. Right then, final lap. Yes, final lap begins for Dan Harper, just as the rain starts to really arrive with a vengeance, actually, and into that first corner. So Dan Harper just needs to try and keep it on the island now for another 2.5 laps, and he will claim that car's second victory of the day. In fact, they'll perform the sweep here at Donington Park on the Sunday, winning the sprint race earlier on, and now winning the pit stop race in the afternoon. As long as he keeps it all together, of course, he'll have worn away a lot of the grooves, a lot of the tread on that wet tyre. So now that it is starting to get wet, it's almost acting more like a semi-slick. So he won't have an abundance of grip, but he should be okay. Makes his way round McLean's corner. Which of the Race Lab McLarens is that? That is the Michael O'Brien car that we know is on slick tyres. So that's one last little hurdle maybe for Harper to negotiate. Got to find a way past a Group GTH car now that isn't going to have a huge amount of grip as the rain starts to come down. With a 44-second cushion, Harper can actually afford to simply follow O'Brien through the final few corners. Through the Fogarty S's they go for the last time. Century Motorsport BMW heads down into the Melbourne hairpin. Does have a little look to the inside, but yeah, I think Dan realised that it wasn't really worth making a big lunge. This is not an important overtake for him to make, really. He's actually not that far away from lapping the third place car, is he, of Greg Caton up the road towards the final braking zone. He goes there. It's been a brilliant drive, this from Dan Harper. A fantastic opening stint from Darren Leung, though. That's really where the big damage was done, and Harper has then brought it home in style. Century Motorsport victorious again at Donington Park. 2 wins from 2 on Sunday, and a brilliant way to round out their weekend. They had a solid day yesterday with 2 third-place finishes as well, but managing to get on the top step of the podium on both occasions today. It'll be a long wait before Tom Roach gets to the line, so we'll probably get some of our other groups through first. In fact, we've already had John Lancaster through to claim the victory in Group GTH. This is the battle that's going on for second, but actually Phil Keane has shaken off Alex Walker, I think, in the closing stages. Ross Wiley comes through to bring the number 28 Lamborghini through into another victory in Group GTO. That's their third of the weekend. They were pipped in the race earlier on today by the Richard Chamberlain Porsche. They're back to winning ways again now, and that will put them a big step towards winning their class championship and towards winning maybe the overall championship. Tom Roach comes through to finish in second place within Group GT3. It will be eventually Greg Caton to finish third within that category. And the Group GTC winner should be Charlotte Gilbert and Gilbert Yates, but they haven't yet made it through. I think they're about to go a lap down, another lap down maybe. In fact, there they are. Now, they haven't officially seen the checkered flag yet, but they've actually let Dan Harper through. So I think they might think that their race is over. Either that or they were going so slowly that Dan Harper just decided to go and overtake them anyway. But the checkered flag has been shown. Hopefully Harper's seen it. Looks like he's still pushing on the in-lap here, unless he's just showboating. Here comes the Top Cats Racing Lamborghini. Well, this is a nice story, really. They had that collision at the end of the earlier race. A lot of damage done. The team have worked hard to get the car out. They had to start from the back of the field. Dan Harper, don't think had seen the checkered flag, actually, and does come into the pit lane now. But Charlotte Gilbert and Gilbert Yates will get a victory from the back of the grid in Group GTC. The last car to see the checkered flag at the end of what was a really challenging race. So Leung and Harper victorious then. Simon Orange and Tom Roach come home in second position. Seamus Jennings and Greg Caton in third. We can take a look now at the provisional race results for our fourth and final GT Cup Championship race of the weekend. Century Motorsport on top, ahead of the Orange Racing powered by JMH McLaren, and then the GCAP Porsche in third. Fourth place for the Group GTO winners, Paul Bailey and Ross Wiley, with Sasha Kakad and Hugo Cook coming back nicely, actually, from those issues on the grid to finish in fifth position. Then it was Charlotte Gilbert and Gilbert Yates claiming another Group GTC victory, and they have actually completed not quite the sweep, because of course they were disqualified from the earlier race, but still a really good weekend for them nonetheless. Then it was Callum Davis and John Lancaster 7th. They won in Group GTH. Chris Murphy was 8th. John Curry and Phil Keane 9th, 2nd in the GTH group, with Tim Docker and Alex Walker completing the top 10. Then it was Steve Walton and Chris Hart ahead of Melly Zhang and Michael O'Brien. That gamble to stay on slicks might have worked, actually, had they stayed on the lead lap. Richard Chamberlain and Nigel Greensall were in and out of the pit lane. We also had problems, I'm afraid, for Alana Carter and Sarah Messier with the number 14 machine of Philip Carter and Michael Broadhurst limping around after their damage earlier on today. Jay Shepherd had delays in the pit lane. The 999 car pitted early with problems. And of course, those intermittent issues for the number 23 McLaren meant that Ian Campbell and Duncan Tappy never really even got started. They were very, very early retirees. So exciting stuff, as always, from the GT Cup Championship. They've got a final round to come from Snetterton a little bit later on in the year. And that will be where the championships ultimately will be decided. There could well be a few tweaks to the points before then, I believe. So watch this space. Head over to the socials for all of the updates on that. But for all of the reaction from our final GT Cup action of the weekend, let's head down to Amber and Piers in a rather soggy Donington pit lane.
There was definitely lots of action in that race, so much to unpack. But congratulations to Century Motorsport for taking the win. Piers, you now owe me £10.
Oh, you did say, didn't you? I suppose.
I
but no,
predicted that.
it was a dramatic race, but for all the right reasons. The rain and the weather. The rain and the weather made it a bit dramatic, and there was a lot to think about. But this was the winning car in front of us, the BMW M4 GT3, Century Motorsport, driven by Darren Leung, and then of course in the last stint, Dan Harper showing why he is a factory BMW driver, lapping about 2, 3, 4 seconds a lap faster than pretty much everyone for the rest of the race. But it was a great race in all the classes, all the groups. Sorry. We spoke to the Morpheus Racing guys because they were having a good battle out there. But no, I thought that was a great end to the weekend, Amber.
That was a really great end to the weekend, and then congratulations to Tom Roach for Orange Racing as well, and Simon Orange, because in terms of the championship, obviously Darren and Dan aren't actually a part of the championship, so they're taking the lead technically in the championship standings, Tom Roach and Simon Orange for Orange Racing. So congratulations to them. It was quite a hard weekend for them, to be honest. Like I mentioned beforehand, every angle, they had so many different teams, guest participants, people in the championship as well. So I think it was quite a strong weekend, but a hard weekend for them.
Yeah, definitely. It was tough for them, but ultimately the invitational cars don't score points, so it was a good points weekend for them, even if it wasn't a perfect on the road. But also a good weekend for Paul Bailey and Ross Wiley as well. Another good result for them, and takes them one step closer to officially clinching the title. But it's a bit complicated with the points, so we can't say for definite whether they have clinched it yet or not in overall and Group GTO.
Well, we will wait for Snetterton, because you get double points at Snetterton, as it is the final few races of the season, which I'm really sad, Piers. Honestly, it's been such a great championship this season. And what was quite nice when I was watching it, there was a midfield section really where it was GTC, GT3, GTH, GTO, and I really enjoyed that. It was quite lovely to see that, to be honest. Lots of group battles going on.
Hey, it's great to see group battles up and down the field, and hopefully that continues at Snetterton. I'm sure it will. Weather might resemble this, as pretty much as soon as the checkered flag came out, it started to rain. But we're going to see if we can have a quick wander through, see if we can grab anyone. Why don't you chat for a second, Amber, while I grab Dan Harper.
Well, it was quite unfortunate for Russ Lindsay, Patrick Collins, gearbox issues, and we saw that actually at Snetterton as well, so I'm hoping that doesn't repeat at the next Snetterton round. So unfortunate, and the same for the Audi as well.
Well, guys, congratulations, another win for you. Darren, let's start with you. A great first stint. You did pretty much all of the hard work to, give Dan a nice big gap, and then Dan just consolidated it.
Yeah, I don't know about that. It was pretty hard work out there, but I feel like I did a half reasonable job, and then I think you got a wasp on. It was a lot of fun actually. We were saying could probably do with the conditions to just throw something on us and just get a good bit of practice in, so it did that.
You got that?
Yeah.
And how was it on slicks in the wet?
Because it was just nothing.
No grip.
It was just nothing. Yeah.
But
it was really good though, because it just forced you to sort of really learn something that
bit creative as well with the lines, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's just a lot of things that I've just never had the chance to really experience. Because obviously, if you're on a test day, you're not going to drive your 500 grand race car around on slicks in these conditions. So,
no, exactly. Anyway, Dan, it would be great to have a word with you about that final stint. I mean, you've driven GT3 cars quite a lot by now. You've driven in conditions like that, but you were 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds a lap faster than the rest of the field. Just help the other drivers. What were you doing out there?
Just trying to find grip, I think, was the biggest thing. Obviously, at the beginning, the wets were the good tyre, but then it was drying up quite a bit because the rain stopped. And then I think there was actually a GT4 that must have been on slicks, and he passed me. I was like, I think that's the first time that's happened. Hopefully the last. But yeah, then at the end, then it was starting to rain again, and I was catching back up to him. So, but yeah, the biggest thing was just trying to find the grip. Obviously, keeping the tires cool. There were still some wet patches in the lines you wouldn't normally take. So in those areas, just trying to get the tires as cool as possible. And like you said, I mean, I have a bit of experience with these cars in mixed conditions, so. Yeah, that was good.
Darren, sum up the weekend in one sentence.
Good fun.
There we go, good fun. We heard it here first. Congratulations, guys, 2 wins this weekend, and hopefully we'll see you back at some other point in the future.
Congratulations.
Wow, well, that's
great
good to
to
hear.
have them join us in the championship, but it's been such a great weekend of racing. Lots of action, lots of drama. We will be back on the 7th and 8th of October
It's
for
our
the
final racing action
few
of the
races
weekend
at
here from
Snetterton.
Donington
So we will
Park
see
in
you
the
then.
Haggerty Radical Cup UK Championship, and perhaps set to be the most challenging of the 3 races this weekend for